now quiet the mind and rise above.
System in whatever way you want to. You can follow my hand motions. You can wiggle your toes or blink your eyes or whatever you want to do. Just don't whack your neighbor accidentally. Okay, so here we go. Or you can make up your own hand gestures. Here we go. I am a living, loving expression of God right here and
right now.
I
am a living, loving expression of God right here and right now. I am a living, loving expression of God right here and right now.
And if you want to, turn to somebody near you and affirm this truth for them. All right. And so, Scott, would you please come up and talk to us about how loving yourself is loving the world? We're so glad you're here.
Hello, everybody. I'm Scott. It's a true honor to be here. I got so mellow from that meditation. I'm getting energetic now. But thank you for having me, Reverend Anna. It's a real treat. It's my first time in Austin too. So Gordon and I have been exploring the city the last few days, and we love it. Yeah. What's that? Salt Lick.
Barbecue.
Oh, okay. We didn't go there. We've had barbecue. Yeah. Not Salt Lick. Okay. All right. Tonight. Thank you. So I didn't sleep well last night. I had a bit of insomnia last night. And I had a workshop yesterday, and it was really beautiful. It was a really beautiful, open group of people. I see several of you here. And during the break, one of the women who was in the workshop came up to me, and she's a medium. And she told me that yesterday morning, when she was getting ready to come to the workshop, that my mother appeared to her. And I lost my mother it's been 34 years since my mother died. So she was having a conversation with my mom, and she was telling me some beautiful things my mom was sharing through her to me. And then she said, and actually your mom's hanging out at the workshop. She's been sitting right behind you to your right, which was wild. This was a wild information to receive. And I got a little stressed out thinking, I haven't seen my mom in 34 years. And now I'm like there she is. So I was thinking about that some last night, and I was just up in the middle of the night. And I'm going to be speaking about self-love today. And what I watched myself do last night was a reflection of that self-love, because typically if I get insomnia, which doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen sometimes, what I've done in the past is just resist it and fight it and get really stressed out and really worried about how it's going to affect the day ahead and really angry that this is happening, and I'm fighting with my mind like, why won't you sleep? And last night, what I chose to do instead was just to be with it, to accept it, to surrender to it, to recognize that there is no value in fighting against what is in that moment, right? There's no value in going to war with my mind. I create nothing good for myself by stressing out and worrying and battling the moment. So instead, I chose to accept and to surrender. And for me, I also chose to trust. I chose to trust that when I show up here today, because part of what my mind wanted to do was like, you're going to be a disaster tomorrow, you have to speak and be present, and you're going to have bags under your eyes and they're filming you, you're going to look bad, like all of the concerns. And instead I'm like, you know what, something's going to happen for you, Scott, with a quieter mind, a more tired mind that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And I can trust that because my mind maybe isn't as alert and keen, that something else has an opportunity to come through. Right? And that's a choice. It's a choice to accept what is, to surrender what is, and it's a reflection of self-love. It's a way last night I took care of myself. And so being up in the middle of the night wasn't a battle, wasn't a struggle, it just was, you know? This is also, of course, my way to tell you if what I say today is completely unintelligible, it's because I didn't get a lot of sleep. Yeah. So I want to talk about self-love because I am a big, big cheerleader for love. And when I speak about love, I'm speaking about the energy within all of us and outside of us that informs all of the greatest things in this world. Things like kindness and compassion and forgiveness and authenticity and truth, right? This is what love invites into our lives, always. So anytime we're operating from a place of love, whether it's love of self, we're giving love to the world. And anytime we're giving love to the world, we're giving love to ourselves. So I'm focusing on self-love today because I feel like what we as human beings have a tendency to do is neglect ourselves, forget how important it is to actually focus with intention, with conviction on loving ourselves and recognizing that whenever we do, we are serving not only everyone in our lives, in our immediate vicinity, but the world on the whole. Because to love yourself is to love God, I feel like we are one with God, so it makes sense to me that if I'm offering love to myself, I'm offering love to God. If I'm offering love to God, I'm giving love to myself, right? So the thing that I want to focus on is how do we love ourselves? You know, it seems to be a good question. We can talk till you're blue in the face about love yourself, love yourself, love yourself. How do we do it? And I think one of the first ways that we do it is through our actions. So I want to tell you a little story. I want to tell you a story about green tea, and even though we're in church, I'm going to follow that up with a little story about my underwear. So forgive me. I'm prepping you to prepare for this. So I'm a big green tea drinker, not as much as I used to be, but I used to drink green tea all the time. And green tea is a very sensitive tea, so you can't oversteep it. If you oversteep it even more than 3 minutes, it starts to get really, really bitter. 5 and 6 and 7 minutes, you're basically drinking what I imagine to be cat urine. No, I've never tried it. So every day I would make green tea, and every day I would oversteep it. 80% of the time, I'd put the tea bag in, I'd pour the water over, I'd leave the room, and then I'd come running back in frantically like, oh no, the tea, 7 minutes have passed. I'd pull out the bag, I'd drink the tea, it would be awful, awful tasting, and I'd drink it anyway, maybe from laziness and not wanting to waste a tea bag. So 80% of the time, I'm serving myself a bad cup of tea, okay? So I want you to hold on to that story, and then I want to talk about my underwear for a second, if you will. I'm sitting at the table one day, typing on my computer, doing some work. And I'm shifting in my seat because I'm wearing these uncomfortable underwear. They're riding and awkward and shifting. And so I'm typing and I'm thinking, I hate these underwear. And I'm trying to focus and I'm like, why are these underwear so uncomfortable? And for 2 hours, I'm going back and forth, literally for 2 hours, typing away, shifting, complaining, thinking. So I'm going to jump back to my tea. I'm going to keep you on your toes so you can keep up. So with the tea, what I started to do was time it. My phone was always sitting right there anyway. It took 10 extra seconds for me to actually set a timer for 1 minute, 45 seconds, which for me is a perfect cup of green tea. And my ducks would quack, the timer would go off, I'd take out the tea bag, and day after day, I had a beautiful cup of tea. And now today, this is years ago, now today I don't even consider making a cup of green tea without setting the timer, and every time I have a perfect cup of green tea, which is a very simple, easy, obvious fix, right? Now I'm going to jump to the underwear. So I'm shifting in my seat, complaining for 2 hours until the light bulb goes off, and it was like, Scott, take off these underwear. Get them off your body. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is not necessary, what you're dealing with right now. So I did that, and because I can be melodramatic, I got out scissors, and I cut them up because I was angry, and I threw them in the trash, and I went to my other underwear drawer, and I got that pair, and threw them in the trash. And the reason I'm bringing this up, it seems so simple, it seems so obvious. Time your tea. Throw out your underwear. But before you judge me, and you're in church, so you have to be honest, how many of you have ever worn uncomfortable underwear by a show of hands? Yes? Everyone, pretty much. How many of you are wearing uncomfortable underwear right now? Oh, see? I promise you after this, you might be inspired to do something different. The reason I'm bringing this up is because on the most basic level, this is speaking to self-care. And how we take care of ourselves is absolutely representative of how we're loving ourselves. So I know it seems insignificant, the tea and the underwear. It's not insignificant at all. Because every time I chose to drink a nasty cup of tea, and every minute I stayed in these uncomfortable underwear, was a minute of self-abuse. And I don't say that as hyperbole. Because what I'm doing by making those choices, what I'm saying is that I don't matter enough to myself to take care of myself in the most basic way. And then the deeper message, of course, is I don't love myself enough to care for myself in this way. And that's a heavy message to move in your life with and to move through the world with. And I assure you, if you're making those choices on the most insignificant levels, if you're making it with the tea and you're making it with the underwear, you're making it on a much larger scale in your life, right? And everything is energy, right? How we carry ourselves, how we present ourselves, the choices we make, the thoughts we're thinking. If I'm moving through the world not in love with myself, I'm moving through the world energetically like this, and I'm inviting into my life the same response. Now, beautifully, this is not a dire story, because I started timing my tea, I threw out the underwear. We can make choices in our most basic areas of life that speak to self-love. We can always be considering, what am I doing in this moment? Is it adding to my life? Is it uplifting me? Is it serving me in a positive way? If so, beautiful, let's do more of that. And at the same time, we can pay attention to the choices we're making that deplete us, that take away from our joy, right? That add more distance from our center, from God, from love. And we can start eliminating those choices. And I promise you, it begins with awareness. The path to self-love, the path to everything, begins with awareness. It begins with paying attention to what we're doing. How is it making us feel? How connected is it to love, to our center? More of the good, less of the bad. Now, of course, actions, that's an important starting point for all of us. Look at your life as you wake up to the end of the day. Start looking at the choices you're making and how they're serving you, right? We also have to consider our thoughts, the thoughts we're thinking, the words we're saying to ourselves. Maybe some of you are like me. When I wake up in the morning, I go to the mirror, I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and what my mind wants to say is, you're ugly, you're too this, you're not enough this. It's a constant cycle of self-abuse. I don't know why our minds are wired that way, but I know I'm not alone in this. Our minds naturally go to self-abuse. So our job as beings who are loving, God-filled beings, our job is to interrupt that cycle of self-abuse and offer ourselves affirmations. This is another way we actively love ourselves. I used to think affirmations were silly. I used to think, if I'm feeling ugly, I'm thinking I'm ugly, what difference does it make if I say, you are beautiful just as you are beautiful just as you are? But what I've come to discover is that where love is concerned, the mind is irrelevant. And if I'm saying to myself in the mirror that I am ugly and I am worthless and I am stupid or whatever else it is we allow our minds to tell ourselves, I know I'm in my head. I know I'm in my ego. And I know I'm out of line with love and God. Because when we center ourselves in this heart space, there is no question of our worth, ever. We are whole, we are worthy. Each one of us is a child of God. And as such, we are as worthy as every other human being on this planet. And when you sink into that space and when you understand that truth and feel it, there is nothing you have to offer yourself but love. And that is work, unfortunately, because our minds are busy, our minds are active. But there is always, always the possibility and always the choice to sink back into this space, because beautifully, this love lives within us at all times. It doesn't go anywhere. If you're out of sync with it, if you're in the cycle of self-abuse, if whatever it is you're doing, that love is still within you, beckoning you to return at your will whenever. So know that truth. Know that love and God is alive within you every single second of every single day. So anytime you're thrown out of whack, you can return to this place. As Reverend Anna so beautifully took us there in that meditation. Right? That is within us. It's not outside of us. So we have to consider our actions. We have to consider our thoughts. We have to affirm ourselves when our mind wants to beat us down and reconnect over and over with the love that lives within us. And I'll tell you what I've learned in my life and seen over and over again, because we live in a dark world. I mean, the world is beautiful and light, and there's so much that's glorious about this planet, and it's ugly and dark and violent, and that's the truth too. And so what happens for me in moments is that I get overwhelmed by the ugliness, and I feel hopeless within it. I feel like, what can one person do in the face of so much violence and people screaming at each other and all the vitriol and all the lack of connection and miscommunication? What can I possibly do? And then I'm reminded again that we are powerful in our love, right? Love transforms. Love is the most transformative energy we have to work with. So when I'm feeling hopeless, when I'm feeling powerless, I remember that my power lives in kindness. I can step outside of my home and go into the community and be of service in some way. I can connect with my neighbors through kindness and compassion. I can remember when I'm online and someone posts something that I find horrific and offensive and crazy. I can remember that if I choose to respond, I can sink into empathy and I can connect to their humanity and remember this is not just a monster typing something away. This is another human being with real human pain and a life that has led this person to this place of sharing whatever it is they're choosing to share. I don't have to condone it, but I don't have to dehumanize a person for speaking it. I can be an example of love, as you all can be too. We can be the examples of love that we want to see in this world, and we can help create it by how we're choosing to show up with compassion, with empathy, with forgiveness. And I'll tell you what, I don't feel hopeless when I'm operating in that energy and when I'm allowing that energy to move through me in my communications, in my interactions with people. It's where I find all my strength, right? And I see in my life, and I know that you all see this in your lives as well, when you are coming from that place, when you are connected to the energy of love and God within you, and when you are acting from that energy, you are creating something good in the world. It's the only possibility. It's the only possibility. So I'd like to do one thing before I finish up. I'd like us all, if you're able to place one hand or both hands over your heart. And I'd like you to repeat after me 3 times. And what I'd like us all to do is speak to yourself from yourself. And connect to that place within you, that heart-centered, God-centered, soul-centered space that without a doubt loves you and sees your worth exactly as you are. So I'm going to say the words, I love you, to myself, and I want you to repeat them to yourselves. And you can close your eyes if you want to or not, and just feel the energy coming from you to you. I love you. I love you. I love you. Feels good, right? That's within you always. Your love for yourself is alive within you always, in the same way that God's love for you is alive within you always. The more we tap into that, the more we operate from that place, the more we not only heal ourselves. The beauty of self-love is that we're healing ourselves, but it always transcends who we are, and that healing goes out into the world. Right? It's not a selfish thing to love yourself. They say you can't pour from an empty cup, and I believe that. When you take care of yourself, you have more to give everyone you encounter in your life and more to give our world. So I leave you with that message, and I want to say to all of you, I love you and God bless you, and thank you so much for having me here today. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.